Every person has experienced a period of deep suffering. To be human is to survive the death of those we find safety in, tragic accidents, and pain inflicted upon us by others, only to emerge more resilient. But sometimes it's not easy to let go of the anguish, and to cope, we interject our stories into art. Writing down the words we don't have the strength to vocalize, painting expressions of incomprehensible suffering, and creating narratives where we are forced to face the silent darkness that lies within all of us. That is the intention behind The Hole, a psychological horror game that aims to tell the story of a silenced victim and the resulting torment of the perpetrator, the creator's grandfather, capturing the tragedy that many people, especially children, persevere through each day. However, as much as I would love to sing its praises, I feel that The Hole fails to live up to its potential, and instead delivers a narrative that is a shell of what it could have been. I want to make it clear that the point of this video is not to hate on the game's creator. I think the visuals and many of the sequences in the game are well written and executed. I just feel like I wouldn't be doing the game justice if I wasn't honest about what it could have done better. And with that, please look at the disclaimers on screen, take them seriously as many of them will be discussed directly both in game and in my analysis. And when you're ready, press play. The Hole opens with a statement from the creator, based on stories about my grandfather. Fuck you, Grandpa. The game then begins in the apartment of an older man, who upon waking up expresses his desire for a beer. After walking to the kitchen, opening a beer, and finishing it in the same gulp, we look for a cassette to play music. When the music starts, the man remarks that the band playing is the only thing that can get him through shitty days and his own dumb choices. He then heats up food, eats it, and takes out the trash. The only thing left to round out the day is to numb his brain by watching TV. Although, when he gets back to the apartment, the door is open, and a whoopee cushion has been left on the couch. Clearly a child in the building is trying to prank him. On the couch and surrounded by beer cans, he watches the cartoons until the connection turns to static. Once the broadcast continues, the man makes a comment about TV being the only thing keeping him sane. It's clear from this introduction that the main character of the game, likely a representation of the creator's grandfather, lives quite a meaningless life. He is isolated, surrounded only by his vices of alcohol and television, which he relies on to keep his mental health stable. He has nothing else to do but wallow in his own misery and regrets while living in a dilapidated apartment building with hostile neighbors next door. Speaking of neighbors, the dopamine from watching TV is short-lived as the connection cuts out again, this time because of the next door neighbor drilling into the walls. When we go to kindly ask him to stop drilling, the neighbor retorts that the man has no right to complain, since the main character is jobless, and there's always a whining noise coming from his unit. With the issue resolved for now, he returns to the apartment only to have his daily routine interrupted again by someone at the door. When he goes out to investigate, he sees no one outside. Mysteriously, a childish drawing of a young girl and a male figure is slid under the door. Holes then start appearing in the man's living room, most likely from the neighbor who caused the outage from before. Curious as to what's on the other side of the wall, we peep inside a hole and see somebody watching a bizarre video in a bedroom. On the TV, there is a recording of a hand rhythmically plugging a cord into an outlet, then a video of a glass of milk being poured. We then cut to the apartment after a few days have passed, and more holes have appeared in the walls, allowing the noise of a couple's constant arguing to be heard. But we don't care about that. We go for more beer in the kitchen. While walking between rooms, we see that the apartment has become disheveled and dark. He makes another bleak comment while eating his standard meal of microwaved cereal and beer, saying that eating is just another excuse to get through the day. It seems that the monotony of everyday life is starting to strain his mental health, resulting in the neglect of his physical space and his body. Looking into another peephole, we are forced into the invasive perspective of a person looking up at a young girl who is kicking her legs. Nothing explicit is shown, but regardless, it is deeply disturbing imagery. This is where my problems with the game first arise. The angle used by this peephole scene is compromising and gratuitous. Combined with the innuendo from the bedroom, both scenes employ quite a voyeuristic perspective that leave very little to the audience's imagination. I will come back to this idea later on in my analysis, but for now, the man ends up talking to the neighbor again, who says that he has no moral ground to stand on since they are both the same person deep down, pathetic cowards hiding from reality. When the main character retreats to his couch, his cartoons get cut off by the dysfunctional family next door. The man tries to pretend that his empty life is better than his neighbor's, even though his apartment has become nothing but shadows, with the only light coming through the front door. Outside, a young girl asks to play hide and seek. No matter if we agree or not, we have our eyes covered and are transported to an intersection of hallways. After walking through the repeated spaces, the endless hallways turn into flesh. Distorted girl's laughter fills the silence as we try to escape this nightmare. We end up next to a bed with a child's drawing above it with a hole drilled where the girl's head would be. Inside, we see an eye open. The eye being another representation of the type of action committed by the main character. The eye is oriented vertically, making the shape reminiscent of a more intimate body part, a childish innuendo which the creators acknowledge in the game's achievement "It's not what you think." Clearly the intention was to shock the player into thinking they were seeing something more graphic. This is where my second major issue with the game comes into play. The narrative so far has been positioning this silent victim to be a young girl, creating an incredibly serious and sensitive story for the game to tell. Why then would the creator make a tongue-in-cheek anatomy joke in regards to a character that has not only experienced sexual trauma, but is a minor as well? I worry that this joke, although maybe well-intentioned, works against the seriousness of the situation and undermines any sense of respect for the victim. Once again, I'll elaborate on this point later when we get a full picture of the game. We then cut back to the apartment. A warm light pours into the rooms, giving us a sense of security. This is, until we look out the window and see that the entire world is moving. It would appear that the main character has detached from reality, now trapped in a purgatory-like space where he is forced to confront the regrets he buried down. Apart from the spinning world, the cassette player was also stolen by the prankster, removing a piece of the man's happiness with it. Surprisingly, the girl from before now comes back and asks to go with you to take out the trash. The two get to talking, and when the main character brings up his usual day of TV and beer, the girl asks if beer makes him angry like her father. In response, the man says that beer actually calms his nerves. Common logic employed by alcoholics that say alcohol actually helps relieve stress, when in reality it creates an unhealthy dependence. Although he admits that his father was definitely a monster when he was drunk, which the girl relates to, mentioning how her dad mistreats her. Though before she can share any more details, maybe in an attempt to tell an adult and escape from her household, the man remarks that the bruises will fade and she'll understand the past better when she's older. When he turns around, the girl disappears, and we wake up in the bathroom with beer cans spilling out of the toilet and bathtub. The neighbor meets us out in the hallway, telling us that things will be quiet from now on. When we go to examine a peephole, we see a zipped up piece of luggage that shakes from side to side as if something was trying to get out, likely the wife of the neighbor. The staggering amount of beer cans continues into the bedroom, and when we look at the original peephole again, we are transported back to the girl's bedroom, where we watch from underneath the bed. We see two pairs of shoes, one belonging to a man and the other a girl. On the screen is the same recording from before. The vision fades and only a pair of legs hangs over the bed. The person isn't big enough to have their feet reach the floor. An achievement pops up through tears. Witnessing is enduring. In the man's apartment, the recording of the plug and outlet plays again, with the furniture in the room moving in time with the video. Children's laughter can be heard. At this point, the predatory crimes committed by the main character should be blatant, as the creator undeniably depicts the abuse faced by the man's daughter. The recording of the plug and the pouring of milk are euphemisms for rape, rather disgustingly representing the action and the climax, even more explicit and voyeuristic than before. With no other option to fix the madness of the apartment, we look outside the door and get scared by a beaver, another prank. Fed up with the games and mentally spiraling after being confronted with such dark memories, we chase after the boy. Like before, the walls turn to flesh and we eventually catch up to a child holding the cassette player. The screen turns to static, and the boy is replaced with the girl who we bonded over with similar family dynamics. The man pleads, "No, no, no, I didn't mean it." He also mentions her name, Agatha, a detail we were never told, and one the main character would not have said unless he was trapped in a purgatory tormenting him with his past. In another sequence of endless hallways, we are made to watch a broadcast on TV that is memorializing Agatha Varga. Then, a pair of giant woman's legs chase the main character down the hallway. I don't believe these legs belong to Agatha because they are wearing black tights, something more associated with older women. Instead, I believe this chase to be a representation of guilt over the man's wife, the same wife he murdered with an axe. The man states that his wife was actually the monster, a deflection of his obvious blame for all the suffering felt in the house. Agatha was an accidental witness to the crime and was severely beaten for it. We then see the man staring at the bathroom mirror, contemplating suicide. Here, the game offers two choices: take the described easy way out or repent. If we don't go through with it, the game shifts to a dollhouse setting, where our two characters have been turned into Russian nesting dolls, acting out the everyday scenario. Agatha bringing beer to her father, who smiles sinisterly in return. In the game, an animation plays where one piece of Agatha is added to her father, in turn making her smaller and him bigger. A nod to the fact that abusers make victims feel small, and the perpetrators more intimidating as the behavior grows to become more cruel. Her father demands for more beer. Each time, the house becomes more cluttered with garbage. The father reminds Agatha to not tell her mother about the games they play, selfishly ignoring her pleas not to play such painful games. With the final piece of Agatha given to her father, the game cuts to a screen of a girl looking directly at the camera with her mouth missing, silenced by the trauma. At the end, the game's creator offers us a heartfelt monologue. "You are not alone. Violence and injustice are harsh realities for many, but that doesn't make them normal or acceptable. Silence only lets the darkness grow, so don't be afraid to speak up about what you're going through. Reach out to people you trust or seek help from professionals and organizations that can support you. This is not your fault, ever. The actions of someone who chooses to hurt others are their responsibility, not yours, especially if you are a child. You deserve love, safety, and respect. Don't give up. Even if it feels like there's no way out and the weight of it is all too much to bear, remember, the pain is not forever. Keep going, hold on, and don't hesitate to ask for help. You are worth so much more than the pain you've endured, and there is a better future waiting for you." We made this game to show you are heard, you are seen, and you are not alone. We now have a full picture on the game's events, and a line from the creator telling us directly what the intention of the game was. We made this game to show you are heard, you are seen, and you are not alone. I hate to say this, but as much as I 100% agree with the positive message, it almost feels insulting after what we just played through. After all, we are not playing through the victim's perspective, one that might help us feel as they felt, or hear what they say, but instead through the perspective of the abuser. There are many games that make the struggles and complexities of victimhood clear, even through the perspective of the abuser. But like I mentioned earlier in this video, what holds this game back is the voyeurism, crude humor, and the lack of focus. We as the audience watch Agatha's abuse, with nothing done in the game to explore her own perseverance or voice. The most dialogue we get from her is when she is talking to the main character about her abusive father, which serves to solidify the grandfather as an even worse villain, instead of sincerely listening to her personal story. Disappointingly, in a game that claims to amplify victims' experiences, the predator's mental journey is prioritized. The game is structured around the torment and remorse of the main character, resulting in the game emphasizing his feelings and how the heinous abuse dealt to others affected him. Confusingly, at the end of the game, the creator's grandfather is given a special thanks. This makes very little sense given the first line of the game, and that the inspired character serially abused close family members. Why would you not instead thank your mother, the assumed victim, for having the courage to continue living after all that she has endured, or for giving you permission to tell her story? This is yet another example of a predator being favored over the victims, effectively sensationalizing the abuse. Furthermore, working through guilt and years of mental suffering does not mean that every misdeed must be replayed so directly, nor does it mean that all tragedy can be lightened with comedy. I feel that it was a major tonal misstep in the game to make a joke about innuendos and turn into an abrasive montage. Jokes should be made at the expense of the abuser, not the victim. Overall, I feel that Agatha and the off-screen wife were underutilized and were not given enough time for the audience to emotionally connect, with time instead being spent on the perpetrator. I also feel that the game and the audience's gaze actively exploits Agatha as we invade the most intimate moments surrounding her trauma. I honestly wish that the last section of the game with the Russian nesting dolls was the main medium for communicating her abuse, as I felt it appropriately walked the line between metaphor and reality. As always, a less is more approach is suggested when it comes to such personal and complex topics, so as not to create a narrative that reads like it was created more for shock value than for a beautiful message of speaking up against injustice. My last bit of analysis for the whole is a discussion of what truly makes a character irredeemable. I feel that it is an unfortunate symptom of horror games that the antagonist must prove their villainy by breaking any and all boundaries. In the whole, rape is described as a life-ruining experience and serves as the moral line that the main character crosses to become irredeemably evil. So not only is the main character a drunkard, physically violent, and a domestic abuser, but he is also an I feel as though the beatings and killings were more than enough to make it obvious that the main character was deserving of his mental torture, and perhaps it would have been enough for Agatha to watch her own mother be killed instead of subjecting the character to egregious shit. I in no way want to police horror, and I understand that to an extent it is supposed to be shocking, intense, and gut-wrenching, but I would like to emphasize the importance of tragedy as being more than just disturbing. Every kind of media, not just video games, can benefit from re-examining the role that sexual assault plays in their story. As far as explicit suggestions for the game, I would say that my main focus would be to either tone down or be more symbolic with the actions taken against the young girl. Although one could argue that the plug metaphor was symbolic, I feel that it was hardly more artistic than what most teenage boys can come up with. Not showing literal is the bare minimum, and I think there are ways of representing these topics far more sensitively. Preferably, I would even go as far as to make it unclear of what actually happens, leaving it up to the interpretation of the player. I would also absolutely remove the "not what it seems" achievement joke. And finally, please credit your relatives for surviving their childhoods, not your grandfather. And with that, I think I have said all I have to say about the whole for now. I think it's important to challenge the media we consume, and I hope that I covered this topic in a respectful way. Thank you to my supporters on Ko-Fi and Patreon. It is support from viewers like you that allow me to make the content I want to create. Take care of yourself, and see you next week.